we have a growing membership and a willingness to participate, but people don't know how to do that yet. So clarifying that as quickly as possible. Like if we made those two things our strategy, and all of the main active members focused on those two things, at least, an hour or two a week, not to the exclusion of other projects, but just focused on them, I think that would really help.
Is there anywhere I should be making minutes in this document? Because you said it wasn't an agenda. Is it a place to take minutes as well? Team update notes. Can I whack them in there?
How we might use Notepad. I don't think we want to end up with a Notepad that's like 47 weeks of notes in one document.
They're my favorite. What are you on about?
That long Google Docs. So I would love a note-taking protocol. I would love thank you, Jim, for starting to record. I'd love a recording protocol. Again, we've fallen off that as we transitioned and are using new tools, but I'm excited about the possibility. I was hoping that we could, in this steward coordination document, that we could at least list who's the lead on what team, and then the team leads or the team members can make a doc and link it there in that steward coordination doc that is their agenda and note doc if you want to get updates on those teams.
So yeah, let me just recap what you said, Christina, because I think that's a very important step into the right direction now. It's sort of creating pathways for all of the new members that we're getting now. They need clear ways where they can go and where they can get engaged, right? That needs to be more formalized, quote unquote, than we have it today. It's a very informal process, and you can look into interest groups, you can look at what we're doing in the work teams, see what you like, what you don't like. But I think we need to sort of clearly state there's a need, obviously there's a need in certain work teams to have people work in certain roles, right? And these are not set in stone, right? So and these are partial roles. You can work partially in a role, right? And do other things that you like, that you're interested in, where your skill sets are, right? So that pathway, and that is very much what I'm doing right now with Dino and Roy on the website, right? So there's also a pathway now for someone outside coming to the collective, coming to this meta construct, to see where can I go, where does it take me? What path do I go down to sign up for the next thing, right? To join the next element. I think that's the thing we should focus on, which raises, of course, the question of, what are these pathways? What are we starting to direct them towards? Is it certain projects? Is it certain activities that we have in the collective? Is it about the model that we're putting together with CAS? I don't know. These are questions. Maybe that's part of the emergent strategy group to figure out what these pathways really are. What are the dominant pathways, let's say, through the collective?
Well, there's two ways things happen, and the bottleneck is top-down planning. I mean, just getting a list of tasks and priorities is difficult, even if we have people even if we could pay people to do them. I see our greatest potential resource now as being the stewards, but they won't be effective unless we organize it so that we have where someone who's a steward gives a list of things they can do. Somebody has to come in and get their name next to some specific activity. Anyone who's going to help facilitate a channel. Every channel, our goal is, to have two people who have the responsibility to monitor and facilitate that channel. And that's, we can ask a new store, what channels do they want to monitor? and gradually fill in the structure of connect the structure of our channels to the structures of our leaders, and create the organization and capitalize on stewards by taking the responsibility to make good use of them. And if that was the one thing we were going to pay for, it would be for someone to be the matchmaker of finding, negotiating effective ways that individuals who would like to be stewards into activities that are wanting, and giving them agency or choice across the board as to what we need, but we obviously need to specify those needs.
There seems to be three ways. I think you can split what you've just said there up into three chunks, Jim. So I'm in agreement. I'm just trying to lend it some structure. One is the host, the facilitator, in terms of onboarding, bringing people in, and not having them effectively balk because they can't find their way. The second one is just the ongoing energy and connecting the dots, as you just described, through just sheer familiarity of being part and parcel of operations more than most. And the third, relating to emergent strategy, is on the basis of defining strategy is knowing what we should do collectively to succeed in our purpose according to our values. It's not a case of just doing it because we can, but identifying which activities are bubbling up that we really should prioritize, perhaps at the expense of other activities, seeing that resources are always finite. So I would say the onboarding, the ongoing facilitation, dot joining, and then this surfacing the one or two or occasional things that really look quite promising and perhaps need a little bit of extra watering and nurturing and extra dot joining. I don't know. Does that categorization into three chunks make sense to everyone else? Is it two? Is it four? Steve, what are you saying there?
I would add that, planning for success, yes, we're going to have new people coming in, and they need to be groomed, so to speak.
Not sure that's the right word. I think you mean welcomed.
Welcomed. Yeah.
Made to feel at home.
They have to find
and oriented, so they can make sense.
Yeah, find out where they
would like.
And how we can capitalize on what they want to do, because they don't know what to do. And
I beg to differ. There's a lot of people who come in with a very clear idea of the project that they would like to support.
And
they don't know the scope of what we're already doing. If we can make that more visible, then they can align better. But I propose that we make once we get the operations that exist going, that we make a clear project support team from the stewards. So when somebody like Eric shows up and wants to start climb that mountain, or has a really clear vision for what they do want to do, that they find it easy to do that. Stewards pulse on what is emerging, because that, even if you're not on that team, that would be part of the steward coordination call every week, and it kind of gives a sense of here's the scope of activities that members are driving across the collective.
Yeah, and a sport that is bringing a project in, which maybe many of them are, they're committing to not only work on their project, but do something with respect to operations, like facilitating a channel or taking notes or whatever. Okay, and to scale, we're we have to make effective use of these sorts. They have to, they have to have something specific that they're doing in operations, that they're committing to at some point. This is how they're assisting operations and helping them find what that is. The way that they would want to help our operations is what we need to negotiate. And largely this doesn't happen. I mean, I looked at the collab and I tried to set up people to lead channels and blah, blah, blah. But what emerges is more ad hoc. And has limited effectiveness, I think, because we aren't getting that peer-to-peer engagement in activities that brings it all together across channels.
Hey, so thanks, Jim. Let me try to, dig a little bit deeper there. I just added one sentence to this section on emergent strategy. What I see as one of the challenges we're facing here. The sentences I wrote down: resolve the tension between individual and collective goals. Okay, I think that's a big issue that we're facing, and I'm calling it an issue. It's an issue in the sense of where do we direct our resources to? If we direct it towards the individuals that are joining us, and there's some great folks joining us right now with great expertise in areas, but they're going to come here to say, I want to explore my ideas further with you guys, right? That's the intention of, those folks already bring new ideas into the collective, right? We want to, of course, include them too in some fashion, right? But that's different from what I call these collective goals. So this is where you get into co-creative space. This is where you look at new technology and see, hey, let's use that in our space, make that part of the foundation, make that part of the cooperation at scale thing that we're putting together, right? And that's going to be the bigger picture for all of us in the future, right? That's going to be the 21st century cooperative, that's going to be the 21st century way of working, future of the organization thing, right? So that's, you see, there's a tension here between obviously attracting a lot of individuals here in these spaces, working on their projects, funding them, showing them the project spaces and giving them resources. But on the other side, there's this co-creative aspect. My interest has been always in this co-creative side. So this is the co-op, this is the stuff we're working on together, right? I don't want to realize my own project. I want to see something be built here together. And I think, to me, that's the challenge we have to resolve in some fashion, right? Maybe it's a balance between the two. Maybe it's a focus and shift towards one of them, and we get back to rather be a community of interest here, and have good conversations about good topics, or it's more into the doing mode and say, okay, we're implementing some of the stuff here, right here at the collective with the resources we have, right? That's what we need to do. Bye, Lauren.
I really think that there's for the ops side, if we just have a regular rhythm that's not too much in your face, of the general member newsletter goes out and it has a small section that said, here are the key needs for ops this month, calls to action, invitations to join, and that's it. And otherwise we support the interesting conversations in the Tech We Trust space for interest groups and showcase the projects that emerge. I think that a cadence almost of like, people know that this is like every fortnight or whatever that comes out. And yeah, we say we're going to do sense making and we're working on it ourselves. So I think really focusing on sense making within the stewards so that the stewards themselves can find their way, and then putting out a cadence to say, here's where we find our way in ops, and here's some emergent projects that you might be interested in from members all across the collective, not just the stewards. And just having that regular cadence is hard, I know, and we don't have, like, we imagine the bots and the tools that make this in the flow. That coordination work is hard. It takes a lot of time. But I think that with, sorry, one more. I think that the roles that Joachim has started to figure out in the doc, the team aims that Sophia and I worked on earlier, and clarifying who is actually stewarding these aims for this team would really be a good start.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Totally agree. And in fact, agree with everything everybody said. The cadence, however, I think it has to feel like a dance that one wants to join rather than a march that one's being forced on. So it's got to look like fun. It's got to feel like fun.
I like that.
Incidentally, this bit, the guy hanging from the bars, the DigLife tweet that just went out with the link to come and join us at the great party and have fun. It doesn't look like fun at all. And it does look rather white male. So
Yeah. Party.lol. I think its intentions are well meant.
Indeed, but the Texas star on the wrist of the gymnast is a little strong.
Well, you need some kind of a workout, Mike, right? It helps you.
Oh, I need a workout, that's for sure. However, in imaging, I'm just a little...
We're changing the entire website. Let's not go down that rabbit hole right now.
Oh, no, of course. No, I'm speaking to this point. Like last night, I heard that the second most translated book in the history of the human race is
Watership Down.
The Little Prince.
Little Prince, right? Yeah.
Oh,
you were close.
Yeah, we're all close. But it was his gig that, to get people building the boat, you get them hot for crossing the ocean. You don't show them the structure and the tools and the plans, And there isn't...
This is what we've been doing. I mean, the whole redesign of I think we've achieved a lot of that, because all of the governance discussion and stuff is now in stewards or in teams. It's not what members are seeing all the time. So I think that we've addressed that frustration somewhat with the new chat structure.
And I think we're seeing the effect of it, in that there is more interest, there's more attention. So I think that's good. It's just, that's the little ember that we've got to flame up. We've got to get some energy into people's desire to be here and do this. To talk, I mean, it's meaningless, but I'm just looking for the fun in making sense.
Well, I suggest we move on to our happy hour and learn from David and John. And the stewards can put things in the stewards channel about like what are the key things everybody would like to do. Adding to those roles that are now linked in our stewards doc. I'm not sure, Joachim, why we have a task list there. That seems like Trello to me, or some such, Taiga. But
oh, the one is in gray. They're just if that's the one in gray, I don't have it in front of me here. That's more jokingly, going overboard with these roles. We don't want to go too far into formalizing roles.
But you could the second sheet in the roles spreadsheet says task list. So is that just a link to whatever tool that team is using, or is that supposed to actually be a task list?
Hold on, let me go back there.
It's the DLCAS roles sheet. Anyhow, if you feel like you're on a team, you've been leading something like getting the member newsletter out, articulating what kind of role that is and some sort of cadence for it would be really great to do in this spreadsheet.
Right. Yeah, let me just share this. Make sure that you see that thing on the right side here that John shared last time. See this is from the second link here. On the right side, John had shared this behavior skills to support a viable system. And you see plenty of roles here. I like that a lot because they're kind of interesting / fuzzy / define your own role here in this picture somehow. Going back to what Michael just said, this isn't the run-of-the-mill marketing specialist, right, that we're looking for. It's more of a creative role that we define as we move along here. That's the kind of role I'd like to see in this thing here. And when I say formal, by formal I mean that we officially recognize that role, be that as quirky as it may, right? But it's an officially recognized role, right? And some do sound, of course, very boring, but it's a role that is somewhere mapped out and somewhere filled in partially or fully, that we do need to move things forward, right? Just want to make that distinction here. And then here, show you one more thing. Where is it? Here, Mike, take a look at this. How's that?
Lovely. Yeah.
Is that a shot from Watership Down?
That's exactly the philosophy we need to have here. We're thinking. Okay, stop this.
Well, we might have, just as a quick update, short tangent if you don't mind, the interest of the radical exchange community, who seems that they've been quite responsive, and we've set a call up with them on the 10th of this month, which is Wednesday, and they're keen to understand cooperation as a service because they need it. And they've also said we're far ahead of where they are, even though they've got a small bunch of techies ready to champ at the bit. They don't yet know that they'll be working for Joachim, but they but what I like about it is there's a level of engagement there. There's something about the book that seems to have kindled an enthusiasm that's maybe it's because they've had a 3-day conference. On that basis alone, it seems palpably more sort of motivated or more momentum than we've been able to cohere as a bunch of distributed part-timers within the collective. But when you put the two together, I'm thinking that could be well, as is our master plan, to bring these collectives together so that we can all work on stuff that's important to us that we all benefit from collectively. So I'm looking forward to understanding what they can bring to the party, how we can orient them in our steward's role to the collective, and offer up through that experience some guidance to them about how they may do similarly to their community. Because apart from one inaugural conference with 500 attendees, they've also got a dozen different city chapters around the world, which are very young, very nascent, very sort of pregnant with potential, but no real way to get it focused, directed to making change happen in the world. So it just seems to me to be quite a nice little opportunity to test our understanding of stewardship, to test our understanding of cooperation as a service, and to collaborate with them to make it happen a little bit faster than perhaps we thought was possible at the start of the year. If the conversation goes well next Wednesday, of course. Everyone's invited to that conversation.
Can you put it on the calendar so we know we are?
Did I forget that, Christina? Here's my wrist. It's just to slap it.
That's Radical Exchange, is that right? Not.
It is Radical Exchange,
yeah.
Which is the name of the community that's assembled on the back of Radical Markets. I think, having been to the conference, that they were keen to give the community a different name, if only because the authors, I think, consents that whilst obviously the thesis behind the book and the title did well, having markets in the title of a community sends out the wrong messages, particularly as I can tell you that it was pretty left-wing, pretty socialist collection of people in Detroit. I mean, I was surprised they were even allowed to host that shit in America. I mean, seriously, this. I thought that wasn't allowed. I thought Pinkos weren't allowed in. I mean, seriously, they were talking about society and things like that. I mean, wow. So, but their motivations are good. They recognise that. I guess you could more neutrally call them post-capitalists.
It's Leonard Cohen's song, "Democracy is Coming to the USA," from 1992.
Is it? It's funny, the Economist Intelligence Unit just downgraded democracy in the US to second class. I got to laugh or cry.
Is that ahead or behind the British?
Thank you. We're not sitting at the moment because there's a leak.
A leak in or a leak out?
There's leaks everywhere, but there's actually a leak of water into the House of Commons, and so they had to evacuate. Steve, it's such a Roy. Just back me up here. It's John. It's just such a great time to be British.
It's fun. Go with it.
Did you see Uri Geller claimed to have bent the pipes to cause it?
Oh, lovely.
Like I said, it's a circus. We're enjoying it. Otherwise, there's nothing else you can do but cry. There we go.
Monty Python.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a good allegory for the state of politics. Politics is what Brexit is proving to me, and that's why I started with this, that politics is broken. And leaking roofs is kind of symbolic, I think. The whole thing is due for a rethink, a redesign. That's in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, the variety does not match. We're still trying to sort of run our politics like the East India Company, the British, 2 memos a year should run it. But it's got a little bit more complex over the last couple of centuries. So institutions are going.
David, if you're available, I would love you to give sort of what you do for those here who have not met you yet. I think that your expertise and the work that you do is something that the collective would like to support, and kind of figuring out how we do that best would be great. So kind of an overview of what you do, and then what you've seen in the collective thus far, and what you hope for.
Okay, so the way I came into the collective was actually through Robert Best. So I guess it was 2 months ago. There was so I've been working in the federated wiki community since 2014, and Robert showed up at the P2P and decentralized web meetup here in Toronto, because I've been asking if there's actually people in Toronto. And so that's the way I came in. My history, people see me from one of two perspectives. One is that in 2011, 2012, I was president of the International Society for the System Sciences. And so I've been involved in systems thinking since 1998 and ran it through that organization. I was also 28 years at IBM. The biggest part was probably either management consulting or market development work. And I retired from IBM in 2012. I've been working on completing my PhD, published a book called Open Innovation Learning that puts together a lot of things around open sourcing. So the term is open sourcing while private sourcing. So if you want the book, it's free. You can get to it at openinnovationlearning.com. And there's stuff in there like pattern language that Christina was interested in. So the direction I've been working, I haven't been so active with the International Society for the System Sciences, the ISSS, for a variety of reasons for a number of years, mostly because when you're president, I believe there can only be one president at a time. And so trying to stay away from and out of the way of other presidents has been what I've been trying to do for some years. But I've been focused on a pattern language community since 2014, trying to bring system sciences back into pattern language, which is limited success. So I'm kind of out there by myself trying to push this now. I've started a research project here in Toronto because Toronto is a system thinking hub. And most of that's at systemchanges.com. And it's really funny that I registered the domain because, one, people don't think about multiple systems, and secondly, they don't seem to think about multiple changes. So systemchanges.com is plural. What I've been looking for and trying to work through, and I wish Robert was on this call because the Open Learning Collective is part of it, but I don't think it's all of it. Is a place that we could actually support knowledge creation, particularly using the federated wiki platform. So Ward Cunningham's been working on it for quite a while, but hasn't actually had a community that could actually use the knowledge or use the technology. So that's kind of the premise for coming in. The Mattermost has been helpful. I need to have debates with others about discourse and stuff like that and the way it's organized. So that's kind of the long-term thing I've been doing. When I was in Shanghai, so I've been working with Kustu Nosala, who's she was in Finland, and now she's at Tongji University College of Design and Innovation, and I've been working with her for 3 years. She's working on various things that like rethinking how a journal works, and working on in effect a process-oriented journal as opposed to an output-oriented journal. And so there's various technologies that would work along that. And if we're going to do that, then it makes sense to do it on open source platforms and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different initiatives that I'm kind of working around. Tactically, one of the things, and Christina may be interested in organizing around this, is that the ISSS meeting, the annual meeting this year, is in Portland, Oregon. It's June 28th to February 2nd. And I've been having discussions with the president, Peter Tuddenham, about having Ward Cunningham come up and do the Federated Wiki Workshop. We already have Michael Mahaffey, who has a new book or he's written a new pattern language. And so we should probably do that. If we're going to do that, it'd be nice to have a platform to do it on, because it's actually too much for most people to get up to install their own DigitalOcean instance and do all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of like a long-range target, but it's an anchor around which a lot of the activities I'm doing is focused right now. Sorry for the long exposition. I'm welcome for discussion. I didn't mean to take up that material.
Oh, no, not long enough.
Great.
I could listen for another 20 minutes. Easy.
Katie, can you toss a link for that event?
Sure. Well, it's at isss.org, so that's easy.
Oh, great. Okay.
isss.org. Yeah, so one of the people I brought on just last week, so Marco is in, so he is a PhD student at in Torino, at Politecnico Torino. Susu is trying to move from Shanghai to Barcelona, and we're targeting, in effect, trying to get Marco position in Barcelona. So this kind of stuff's all moving. And so I brought him on because one of the tests I had was about whether I could access the website and everything while I was in China without a VPN, and the answer is yes. So one of the big advantages of working with the DigLife Collective is that it's not Google and it's not Facebook. Strangely enough, Facebook is actually easy to get to access to without a VPN. So there's a statement about how the Chinese government thinks.
Sweet. So Jim, go for it.
It's great stuff. Maybe you could do a presentation of some of the stuff you're doing for us one of these days. I certainly like to get involved in working with FedWiki in the open learning group. I'd like to get more involved there, but.
Because one of the proposals I made, and I need to talk to Robert about it, was he's starting to put up more infrastructure on the OpenLife site, and my suggestion was actually that, and he hasn't responded to this, so it's kind of unfair to be talking behind his back, but hey, is that the Mattermost, having Mattermost open on open learning, to me makes some sense if you want to attract people. But I think that when we start getting into real discussions, I think there should be members of the DigLife Collective. It's okay to lurk and watch on content, but at the point at which you're not paying for the service, and part of open sourcing while private sourcing is someone has to pay for the service. And it's a cooperative, and they should be a member of the cooperative. So the discussion I need to have with Robert is whether, and I'm not even sure what the governance on that is. So whether it makes sense to do that and have people kind of get involved. One of the websites I've been running is the Systems Community of Inquiry, and it's stream.syscoi.com. This is a WordPress site, and the history of that was that a while ago, Gene Bellinger, who's not a technologist but fancies himself as a systems thinker, started the system thinking world up on LinkedIn, and accumulated, like, at that point, like 19,700 people on LinkedIn. And then didn't like the terms and conditions and said, okay, I'm going to drop it. And just like walked away from the whole thing. Benjamin Taylor in the UK was one of the people who said, we should actually try to maintain some of that content. And so we ended up moving some of the people over to Facebook, which was not what I wanted to do. And I was trying some more stuff with BuddyPress I'd done before with WordPress, which wasn't working very well. And so I moved some of the people to Google Plus, which of course we know was a good while lasted.
Right.
Benjamin had found a platform called lobster.rs, and it's a single developer doing work, and allowed people to get onto what was then model.report. But then the developer decided that he wasn't really doing it, but wasn't going to maintain that longer term. So Benjamin asked, well, what should I do? And I said, okay, if I were you, I already been doing stuff at syscoi.com. Why don't we move the stuff over there? And so this is the second year that we've been having stuff. What I'd like to do, though, is actually move the syscoi people over and try to get the Facebook people and some of the LinkedIn people, although LinkedIn people are not that great, moved over onto DigLife.
Is that a categorization you made based on their platform choice?
No, it's that. Well, there's a problem because a lot of people come to system thinking because they want to learn, but the problem with system thinking is that when you come in, it fills in what you don't already know. So one of the jokes I had was that I went to the Resilience 2011 meeting because the Resilience Alliance had published this new resilience workbook, which I thought was really strange. And so I actually went to the first presentation of it, and they were presenting and we're talking about how you actually do resilience work, and part of it was that they had this really strange concept of going out and doing inventory, and it's like, what do? Why do you call it inventory? Well, they're ecologists and botanists, and so they think you count people like you count trees, and so that's why they call it inventory. And I said, okay, well, obviously, any sociologist would think that was ludicrous. But if you're an ecologist and you don't know, then what are you going to do? So on LinkedIn, we have that sort of issue, where people come in and they're interested in learning systems thinking, but because the search is so bad and the structure is so bad in the communications on LinkedIn, after 2 months, you get the same questions all over again, and it just recycles. So. Yeah.
So David, I just wanted to follow up on something you said earlier about the Open Learning Commons thing and membership. So we're moving towards a new membership model that we call sort of a multiplex model. We invite other organizations into the umbrella or vessel of what the collective stands for, right? So what we wanted to do is sort of collect one single membership fee, and then you can play in multiple boxes here, right? You can go to the Open Learning Commons, you can go to the Norton Dayton's Institute, you can go to Team Human, wherever you want to play. But and that's important. What you just said is you need to be a member to do that, right?
Yeah.
So we have your record stored somewhere. We know you're a subscriber, and we can reach out to you at any point, right? So we know who you are. So that's part of the plans that's currently evolving, in terms of what that membership fee will look like and how much access it's going to give you across the collectives.
Good. I had Peter Tuttenham, who is the president of the ISSS, join, and so he's on board and a member of the Digital Life Collective, but we haven't actually linked up since I was in China.
Also, it seems like a lot of the same conversations around tools to use and federated wiki and sort of when to use which for deep discussion, learning projects, tasks, that sort of thing, has been emerging on the Thursday ecosystem mapping calls, which I'm not sure you have on your radar or not. They're on the general public DigLife calendar. And it is definitely an overlap between my mapping project. It started because Robert and I are like, collaborative mappers together. And he has a channel for it in the Open Learning Commons, but I've also just invited you to the maps interchange in the DigLife. And that's all DigLife members. It's not a public space. So discovering the flows of sort of similar to what we did within Mattermost, saying, if you just want to talk about interest groups, you're in the main DigLife chat. If you want to talk and learn in an open public space, not just about tech, you're in the Open Learning Commons. If you want to do a project, there's projects, and then of course ops is ops. A few tools, including for sure federated wiki, the interest that has been shown by a lot of people there. Robert, David Bogle, our new member Colin was also showing me that. So there's a lot of interest in using it. and coordinating with a Mattermost space and then some sort of more public forum space as well. And kind of knowing when to go where, and having coherence among a core team that sort of knows when to go where and helps to steward that learning community. I'd be really interested in doing that around systems thinking, systems mapping, and how to make. I'm very interested in the causal loop diagram stuff as relates to strategy and helping communities strategize across organizations where we often live.
Yeah, in the system changes project, I'm actually moving a different direction. So I've been claiming that since 1998. I've more or less been teaching other people's content, and then now I'm actually trying to do something different. And so the most recent presentations I've been doing have been focused on errors and breakdowns, although I think it's going to become, after a conversation, it's probably going to become errors and traps. Because the premise behind the system changes work is that most people aren't interested in systems except to the extent that they change on them or they want to change them. And so starting off and describing a system is like, okay, well, let's get a little more tactical about that, and let's actually focus on what changes you want to make. But that's process, that's work in process, and it may stabilize a little bit over the next month. So I'm running a System Thinking Ontario session. I guess that'll be in May, and then there's a conference at Waterloo at the Canadian Society for Ecological Economics. So all this stuff is kind of in motion. But Federated Wiki is part of it, because then the pattern language would not be about things that don't change, but things that do change.
This is
The developer that I'm working with. Oops.
Please, Christina. Actually, I was going to actually return to your mention of the Federated Wiki, and I think you mentioned Ward Cunningham, David. Could you explain what problems that solves or opportunities that opens?
So Federated Wiki is different from the traditional idea of wiki, because everyone has their own personal wiki. And what it allows you to do is to drag and drop content, either full pages or paragraphs, from someone else's content. Worf's original belief was that he said that after he's dead, if content was important, it will still be on the web because someone else will have forked it. When you're doing multiple authorship, it allows to do multiple perspectives and multiple revisions in branches. So one of the features of it is that if Christina has a page and she's edited it, and then I fork the page, nothing really happens, as I get it in my wiki. So now I've got it personally on my website. But then as soon as I edit it, she gets a notification on her page that says new. And so she can automatically bridge over to my wiki and see it side by side with her edits. And then she can make one of two decisions. One is, oh, that's really great content, David actually improved it, and she forks the page back. Or else it's like, no, David's talking about something different, and then she may end up writing something different or just leaving her page. So what it allows is multiple perspectives, because currently wiki is, you have to agree, and you get into the flame wars that happen on Wikipedia.
I've heard a few people show it to me and sort of really rapidly, very fluidly go this, and this, and like, here you can just do this and that and that. And then I don't have any idea of where to start myself. So as somebody with just a little bit of tech experience and no developer experience, is there a good starter guide you can point me to?
No, and this is why we actually need to do it inside DigLife, because
there you go.
Because what you need to do, like, so this would be saying, like, okay, there's 3 pages in Wikipedia, go at it. And it's like, yeah, but when you've got 10,000 pages, kind of like, oh, I see a spelling error, I could fix that. Yeah, so it's a starting off problem. Plus,
tool is like, if we can make a clear onboarding thing to that, then that would really help.
Yeah. So I spent December actually I'll give you the page for my wiki, which is wiki.coevolving.com. I spent December refactoring what's called the welcome visitors page. And my criticism was that Ward hasn't actually changed since 2014. So when he says visitors, he means developers. And it has almost no content on it. And so as an example, one of the things that I made a distinction on was, and you have to have enough history about technology to get into it, was in effect he's reinvented HyperCard. And so what he calls a page, it would be much more helpful if we called a card, because you can have multiple cards on a web page. So if you had multiple pages on it, if you had multiple wiki pages on a web page, now it gets really confusing, right?
Yes, I guess the closest that now I've seen the federated wiki pop up on your one at Co-Evolving. I know that I've been here before. Well, I know I've seen federated wiki before because I recognise the style immediately. Yeah. And it does remind me, in terms of that card metaphor, of TiddlyWiki. If you come across TiddlyWiki, and I have to say, the thing I love about TiddlyWiki most, although Jeremy would probably dislike me saying this, is just the word tiddlers. I just, you say you got a problem with the word pages. Tiddlers, it's just so original. I have to say, I do like it.
Yeah. See, I've also used TiddlyWiki. And there are advantages and disadvantages of it. It's good as personal productivity is fine, and the cross-platform support is actually rather good. But if you're actually trying to collaborate, it's going to be a problem.
So Jim Pick has worked with the DAT project and has a multi-writer TiddlyWiki going. It's just on glitch right now, but it's definitely a really interesting project. I would love to see how. Is TiddlyWiki and Federated Wiki completely like the same thing and replaceable for each other, or is there a use where use one versus use the other? I'd be really curious about that.
You missed out the fact, Christina, that actually it was the collective that brought TiddlyWiki and the DAT project together. We did that.
It was also Jack's cat, or Jeremy's cat, Jack.
So Federated Wiki is also available on DAT, and is also available on Glitch. So they've been working on those projects as well. And the difference is, again, multi-author. So if you have TiddlyWiki, you can fork the whole TiddlyWiki, but you can't really fork one page or one paragraph.
So from my end, David, I see this, from where I want to take some of the collective work here is into let's have a showcase, let's have a use case here for something like the Federated Wiki. How would we apply that? And I just mentioned here in the chat, actually, something like this, put it on our homepage to actually have people see how you would structure a site using something like a Federated Wiki, right? That is a fascinating aspect to me, but it means also that we sort of pick one or two of these technologies and then apply that across the collective, right? Offer that as a service to other organizations who join us to see, hey, by the way, you need something good to structure your content and to publish this out there. Here's a way how you do it, right? So that would be the interesting vector for me. Having said that, wikis is a whole different area of wiki gardening, content management, understanding structure and trees and all this stuff, right? That comes along with that. Not many people are familiar with that or even willing to go into that space, right? So there's obviously room to explore here and see where does it make sense, for not for the expert user, right, but for the average user, to actually begin using this kind of technology, right, for their context, for their purpose, for their project.
Yeah, and I think the experience we've been having with the system sciences group on. Actually, the ecology of system thinking is the name of the Facebook group. Is that a lot of people like talking about it and conversing, and that's the way they learn. And typically, when we get together, that's how we do it. I often run into people learning system thinking, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to go off and read it," and I say, "Don't do that. Don't read it. Doesn't help. let's just talk about it for a while and get it.
Exactly.
Hello, Robert. Just saying hello, mate. You were being talked about and then you joined. So just saying, in a nice way.
Yeah, Christina pinged me. So
see, it wasn't your ears were burning; it was popped up on your screen. Anyway, that's cool.
Can you give David a little bit of a summary of the tools conversation that's been coming up on the ecosystem mapping calls and where that's at?
What you mean? Well, we sort of have been talking about federated wiki, and I know David's interested in getting sort of a farm up and running for us, and has some ideas about how to sort of facilitate larger scale collaborative writing together. And we were also talking about how we might pair something like a federated wiki with a more traditional wiki, so that like one's more tumultuous, kind of like evolving, and then it sort of like informs what goes into a more sort of static, something we can converge on type wiki, so that you have sort of one space that somebody could be pointed to and not get lost in sort of exploring a whole bunch of federated wiki spaces or something.
So one of the things that Ward had said about Wiki is he said that Wiki is the slowest changing layer, the slowest changing platform. Because I blog a lot, but when I blog, the content generally is stuff I'm still trying to figure out. It's not yet static. And so the idea about content that gradually becomes more solid is something we should look into across multiple technologies. And so first, I was looking at the Mattermost, and I was thinking, well, I don't really want to do discourse. I actually do discourse. The Manjaro community is all built on discourse. It's an amazing community, but it's a technical community. And so I had some reservations about getting people there. But then when I started working on Mattermost more, it's starting to get long. I say, okay, maybe we actually do need discourse. But the point at which people branch off from having a conversation into owning their own content, I think is served by federated wiki. Now, going beyond that and getting to a single wiki, I think is actually a step backwards. Because in effect, you've kind of removed. Well, in effect, you're recreating Wikipedia, and there's lots of problems with Wikipedia in that sense.
Yeah, so the federated piece of that is the important and the interesting piece to me. You know, the whole notion of ownership of the content, that's so embedded in the flow of using that kind of tool. And, you know, as a simple use case here in the collective, I could see that applied for, you know, we were trying to put together a sort of a handbook for the collective, right? So here are the protocols you can use for, you know, governing some teams. And what I see happening is once we onboard other organizations is they're going to like this. Yes, they're going to look at the handbook, but they're going to have their own flavors of that, right? So to me, something like that is an ideal segue into, yeah, you can still be linked to that handbook, right, that we originally created, but you have your own flavor down the road, right? It's just another branch that you maintain in your own tree, right, in your own wiki page there. And it makes clear who was doing what in that context, right? That's another important thing that we want to monitor going forward, right? To establish that relationship, you know, that kind of, Nora Bateson talks about warm data, right? So that kind of relationship data that we can share and then feed back into the collective, right, is a very, very important aspect of that. And I can see technology like that supporting exactly this in some fashion. So that's good to hear.
So how do we get moving on getting federated wiki actually up on a farm?
Well, I haven't personally done it. It seemed like David was sort of suggesting that he would. I think I heard that you've hosted one yourself, or maybe not. Maybe I'm forgetting something.
Well, no. So let me tell you the issue or the experience with this, and this comes from using a technology and learning how it works or doesn't work. So the way that Ward actually blogs or writes his wiki page content is he has multiple microsites, and the reason that you do this is that the way that you so when you go on a federated wiki page, it's actually quite small. It starts off with welcome visitors, and then you click on another page, and in the background it starts loading up your neighborhood, what's called your neighborhood, which are pages that are associated with the page that you're looking at now. And that expands quite quickly. So you start off with 10 pages, you click, and then you have access to like 30 pages, and then you click, and then it's access to 70 pages. And then you click, and then you have access to like 1,000 pages. And so the reason architecturally for doing that is that when you click on something, you don't want to load 10,000 pages. Now, this is something most people don't realize. So the other thing that he's been doing, starting up, is he's providing help to people. And so this idea of the farm came up. And so you end up, does the farm mean multiple wikis or multiple users? Or multiple users and multiple wikis? And that's something that he hasn't actually had a challenge with, because people have not been using we haven't had problems with overload on the pages, but it's something we would in the long term. We have to be careful with how we start this up and how we do it on DigLife. Because when we talk about the farm, I think that probably we have to take both cases, is that someone will have their own homepage in effect, and then they'll start writing microsites on top of that. And so it's going to end up being multi-user, multi-wiki. Most people will probably start off with just one wiki, and then after a while start expanding, and you go, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea, I need to refactor it.
But is it rather than multi-wiki or multi-user, isn't it just multi-pages? Is the page the social object in the federated wiki?
No, and you see, this is the hard part about it. What Ward has done in effect is he's blurred he's blurred who owns what and where it resides. So each card, let's use that term, each card that you open will open another card, which will provide you with a link to something else. Now, when you click on a second card, it fills what's called your neighborhood. Your neighborhood is, in effect, a website that is linked to other websites. But then the question of how far do you have to look ahead before you start loading the whole internet onto your computer, like that's what you get into. So these are sort of things that are confusing for people that are first coming into Federated Wiki, and may not be the way that we need to describe it. Again, it's I guess the question is, how many people will actually want their own wiki, their own federated wiki, and how many people will actually be at the point at which they will just be in a conversation and then refer to a wiki. So these are sort of things that we actually need a larger group. So it may actually make sense for DigLife itself. I don't know, you want to set a target in the next month, next 6 weeks, to actually try setting this up for ourselves. And then, because if the target is for end of June to bring in the ISSS community onto the website, then it's like, okay, we don't have much time, so we better get some more experience on this.
I think it would be a good idea to have maybe a weekly work study if someone's willing to set that up. I would certainly want to attend if I could. Mm-hmm. And we can work as we learn as we play. And to try and set it up and see what the issues are and make a plan.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
How do you see the ISSS group wanting to use FedWiki versus Mattermost / portal services that you're seeing emerging in the collective?
So we're going through another phase. So when I joined the ISSS in 1998, the website at that point, the internet was new, and Tom Mandel had in effect put up static web pages. In 2003, I had moved the web content towards Drupal and Open Journal systems, and it more or less has been frozen there ever since. Now, Peter Tuddenham has come onto the project, and his project is actually on his traditional project has been on ocean literacy, and so he's been focused much on systems literacy. But then it's, well, what do you mean by systems literacy? Where's the content? All that sort of stuff. So that's worth a discussion with Peter to see where he would see that headed. I think that I'm actually interested much more in the content that is kind of on LinkedIn, Facebook right now, and getting those people. A lot of them are system science members. Like if they're active on social media, they'd be active there. And so particularly the Facebook group, where there's a lot of discussion going on, because the sort of conversation we were getting before was, well, everyone's already on Facebook, and I go, well, not everybody's on Facebook, so we should actually find a better place for them.
John's got his finger wagging. So polite. That's what I like about you, John. So polite.
A quick question to help me understand, and I hope the rest of the group will, about Federated Wiki, and it's say a use case. So if DigLife was working on, say, a new pattern language, what would be the advantages of using a Federated Wiki rather than, say, a living document in GitHub?
So it doesn't require you to actually do Git pushes and pulls. It does it automatically. And so Git itself, because I have done stuff on Git, and getting an average person to work in Git, it's not something we really want to do. I have another project I'm looking at, the journaling project I'm looking at with Susu Nosala. I'm thinking about Git. But I asked her, when you're doing journaling of the type that she wants to do, are you going to have, in effect, a facilitator? Like, because we're replacing a journal, and journals normally have editors and people that do all the formatting work for you. And she said, well, this is a community of artists, and so there's no way they're going to be doing, Git stuff. And I go, that's fine. Okay, then you're actually going to be setting up the processes for someone to manage that. I think that if you're actually in Federated Wiki, most of the stuff is transparent, and you learn the interface, and you end up just working with it and finding yourself in other places. So the central problem I have with Federated Wiki is it's such a big leap for people that it's kind of like if someone told you what Wikipedia was all about and you'd never seen Wikipedia before and you kind of couldn't get it. And it's at that stage, at the early stages. So certainly Ward in 2013, 2012, when he was looking at this, actually started from the idea of Git and whether we should actually be managing pages that way.
GitHub confuses the hell out of me. I mean, the fact you're telling me that it's not like that, I'm just going, oh, that's great. Yeah, because phrases like pull request are so obvious. I mean, clearly, pull request is immediately understandable. Oh man, does my head in, and I'm reasonably techie. But anyway, that's just me. Joachim, what are you thinking in terms of the overall technological vision that we've assembled for the collective, the corporation as a service, and how wiki functionality fits into that, just to put you on the spot.
Sure. While I do that, let me share a picture to explain what my point is on that. All right. Of course, my color candy thing. As you know, I've been working on onboarding some of these conversational elements for the collective, right? And that goes into programmable chats. So that to me is an extension of the current chat tools, technologies we have, right? Because you can fold in bots, you can fold in webhooks, you can fold in applications into chat streams, make them much richer, right? And since we own that thing on Mattermost, and that's another important point to me, David, in these whole chat tool conversations, right? What can you do? How much of this stuff do you actually own and can modify it? Is an important question to me. And here you can actually begin to do that a lot deeper than you would do if you go with out of like a Slack solution, for example. You're really dependent on the company then. But then there are other tools here, right? Robert here is working with this big blue button thing, a great video conferencing solution that pulls us out of the Zoom, drag, where at some point they're going to charge some money for their services, right? Or go into a direction that we don't like. But again, that's an open source solution. We want to pull that into this bundle of conversational elements. And so cards and boards is something John Calvin has been working on, and notes and wikis, of course, that's another piece. But as I said earlier, right, if we pull it into this 21C CAS thing, we want to see a use case here, right? Does it become a conversational element? In what context, right? How are teams actually going to use it in the collective? Does it make their work easier, right? Is the interface, good enough for them to jump in and get ahead of the curve very quickly? That's an important piece. I mean, with Ward stuff, I'm looking at the same interface that he did, years ago when he started this. And to me, I know one point, of course, it's not necessary to evolve that kind of interface, but yet technology changes so rapidly, right? I've been out of the technology for a while and came back in now with some front-end technologies using Vue and React. It's amazing what has changed in that space, right? And I'm wondering if especially, technologies in the wiki space, right, they tend to be, looking backwards into, when did that thing started, the first iterations, and then build off of that, right? And then they're not making a cognitive jump here to sort of a whole new interface. What is possible out there? What can you make with this stuff? That to me is an interesting aspect. Things we're starting to explore here and looking at the mapping stuff, the holonic charge, the skill charts, the network mapping we're doing over in the organizational elements, right? But so back to Philip's question, right? So we don't want to see this kind of technology fitting somewhere into the bigger picture of, that's the kind of services we want to explore, experiment with in the collective. That's technology on the conversational side, but we have to balance it with other things. How are people actually going to use that technology, right? What kind of protocols and principles are we going to enable with that? How can people evolve using that kind of technologies? How are they working together in different and new ways, right? How do you participate in these things? Make it open enough, make it accessible enough for a lot of diverse group to jump into this whole game. So that's my quick point on this question, right? So it's a fascinating journey, and we're all here to explore that further, I think.
Man, I just want to sweep across that list of boxes and get to the other side by the end of the month. If only. It's such a compelling combination, I think. At least I haven't spotted anything that isn't. It's just necessary and sufficient. It's just the right. It just makes sense when I look at it. Yeah.
I would say the key difference between FedWiki and, let's say, Wikipedia or other wikis, I think we need a wiki, and we can use the wiki in Tygo or a wiki in GitHub. But I mean, FedWiki is revolutionary. It's the future. It allows the evolution of text in a way that just can't happen with a central wiki.
I like the idea of doing our website on a TiddlyWiki, which allows multiple contributors, but kind of one version, and then have a tiddler on like, here's the federated wiki world, have fun, and have that project emerge under there. That would be really cool.
Just following on from the conversation Joachim and Dino and I had this afternoon. I mean, looking at Federated Wiki, just the way it's presented in terms of its just its presence and its potential there looks really interesting. Could actually solve. In fact, speaking back to Joachim's his triangle diagram, which we haven't seen yet, but it's probably to hand. There you go. Oh, it's been inked in since this afternoon. It's looking more complete. But yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
I know there were a few people that had to jump, so.
One of the things that Federated Wiki has not done well, and it's funny that Ward worked on this, was it doesn't work well on mobile devices yet. And so there was the new technology that came out from Google 3 months ago to build web stuff. And so Ward actually started working on a prototype for it. But I think the Google project is not yet fully launched. And so he said that he got a response from Google that, not interested. But as opposed to having pages opening up left and right as he has it he has it opening up in effect up and down, and so it'd be much more of a card metaphor where you're sliding things up and down. And so he actually had built and mocked it up, but hasn't gotten to building it yet. We actually need someone that's more UI focused. Ward's more a back end guy, so. We ever find a young person that does web development, they want to build an app, that'd be a good place to do it.
Actually, one thing I wanted to mention to John's question about pattern language, I'm pretty sure Federated Wiki is designed specifically to be a tool for facilitating the development of pattern languages. And Ward himself's using it right now currently with, I think his name's Michael Mahaffey or something, somebody that was an original collaborator with Christopher Alexander and some, oh no, okay, I have it wrong. David's can correct me, but.
Yes and no. Yes and no. So yes, he worked with, he studied under Christopher Alexander. But I met with the original one of the original collaborators because I've been at the architecture conferences, and so Max Jacobson is one of the people. But one of the issues that I need to work through, and Robert's part of the discussions here in Toronto, is that some of Christopher Alexander's suppositions about architecture are based in physical space, and they actually don't translate to either information space or to social space. And so we have to do some fixes on the way that we do pattern language.
Well, we should let folks go. Is there any next steps or actions? David, I have already posted in the maps interchange, getting people together who probably Jerry would be interested as well to come to that thing in June. So anybody wanting to coordinate around that as a timeline, let me know there.
Good.
Robert, any next steps there for FedWiki Learning Group?
I guess, well, we can sort of play on glitch already, but maybe the next step is to just figure out the quickest, easiest way to get our own farm up. And yeah, I think having, during the ecosystem mapping calls, we could play with showing people how to use it and sort of playing with it some.
Can Cloudron host a farm, or is that no?
I don't think it's set up to be an easy like one-click install type thing, but I could look into it. I don't think so though.
Yeah, Ward holds regular calls on Wednesdays, 10 Pacific, and so we can certainly talk to him. But he's also very responsive on the Riot and chat channel they've got, Riot Matrix.
Robert, would you ask Ward if he would like his calls to be listed on the DigLife calendar so we can just get more people learning from him?
Sure, yeah, I can do that. Yep.
Any more for any more? Joachim and Roy, update on the progress on the website if you have a chance. But we can do that asynchronously too. If not, everybody's on the call for a long time and I need to jump to.
Okay. All right.
Yep, let's do asynchronous.
Channel where discussion of FedWiki would go.
Probably the ecosystem mapping calls channel in the Open Learning Commons, right? Seems like the team that's been really resonating with that tool.
Yeah, that, or I'm sure the Metacogs group will also be playing with it too. So yeah, either's fine. And I'm gonna send Ward that message right now. So if I'm distracted.
Okay.
Great to see you, David.
Yeah, thank you for the update.
It's great.
Right, see you around.
Thanks all. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon.